Hi guys, I have often suggested that atheists really shouldn't engage in live debates with very experienced theists such as William Lane Craig or DaSouza. Not because these guys have irrefutable arguments, but because the nature of the debate always goes against the atheist. Now, a gentleman called Bull in the Heather, or it could be a lady actually, Bull in the Heather, said, "I get frustrated by how asymmetric the theist-atheist debates are, in the sense that one side uses the rhetorical, oratorial and psychological tricks that politicians and lawyers regularly use to persuade their audience, whilst the other side, the atheistic side, frowns on using anything but their own arguments. Until the irreligious scientists and philosophers make the decision to descend to, say, Craig's and DaSouza's level, they will continue to be frustrated by their opponents' manoeuvres." Now, I would argue that the scientists should not be descending to the theists' level at all. The reason that debates are asymmetrical is because supporters of theism lack empirical evidence to support their position. So their position by needs must be about the philosophical argument. William Lane Craig's version of the cosmological argument, for example, is not an argument based on evidence. It's based on induction or on philosophical pondering on what must be, because A follows B follows C, and of course the logic used to make these inductions is often fallacious, but the problem is that philosophical arguments are often quite complicated and can even just be about opinion, and there's no scientific fact to back most of them up, so far as I can see, any of them so far as I've ever seen. But they're very easy to lay these kind of gotcha traps and these kind of these silly traps that can give the impression, simply because one doesn't have an answer, that one has lost the debate. For example, it's like the political situation. If I am facing an opponent and I accuse my opponent of having raped somebody, he's put in a position of either having to deny it and thus give credibility to the accusation in the first place, or ignore it and come across shifty for ignoring it. And either way, it's a lose-lose situation for me. Now, it's my opinion that when you have a live debate with a theist, that you are entering their domain, because it's the domain of words and philosophy. It's not the domain of logic necessarily, or no, it's not the domain of evidence. The truth is made no truer or less true by your ability to come back with a snappy retort. Yet often the theists are able to lay logical traps which can create a situation where the atheist or the person who's basing their arguments in evidence can be tripped up, and merely because they trip doesn't mean that they're incorrect. It just means that they're I really don't like philosophy, I have to say. I think philosophy can often be used to argue that black is white. I kind of consider it to be this might be my ignorance speaking, but I kind of consider it to be almost like a dark art, a dark art of logic, where you can logically conclude X, Y, and Z without ever having any evidence for it, and X, Y, and Z could be completely false, because they're based on your presuppositions, they're based on your reasoning, they're based on a whole bunch of things which may not actually hold true. So often to unravel the twists and turns of an experienced theist's arguments, it requires time, and especially, you know, if you look at William Lane Craig, for example, very, very often he very tightly constrains the terms of a debate, and also even the opponents of a debate, so that it favours his well-rehearsed script, and then he can go away and research the arguments of his opponent, and yet again come up with more philosophical kinds of arguments. And then if you look at somebody like Christopher Hitchens, now Christopher Hitchens' arguments against the Bible were entirely arguments from emotion, really. I mean, he wasn't really he wasn't arguing from the position of science. He wasn't arguing from the position of evidence. He was just saying, look how terrible it is that religion does this. Or if you look at Richard Dawkins, now he argues from evidence as far as human evolution goes, but to be honest, he's not very well versed in the broader spectrum of cosmology or science or physics or any of that kind of stuff. And I think often he kind of naively blunders into things where he looks a little bit foolish, to be honest, and he doesn't really represent the atheist case well. And what happens is Christians believe, or theists of whatever stripe, believe that because he didn't have a ready answer for a complicated theological, philosophical debate, or he's not well versed in biblical history, or the nuance of interpretation of the way stories were told in the past, that he must be wrong because he didn't understand it. And it is true that the more that science refutes the previous evidence of theists, the more that theism has to retreat into the idea of philosophy and interpretation. So a classic situation might be to argue that the Bible was a different context for a different time, or that the stories were not written in a historical context, they were written as an allegorical context, so you can't take them literally, except when it's convenient to them, of course. Or that the terms used in the Bible don't mean what we think they meant, and unless you have a very, very deep knowledge of all of these things and complete comprehensive knowledge ready at your fingertips, it's very, very easy for a theist to just throw up some arbitrary piece of information that stumps a debater, which, given the time to research, could easily be refuted or put into its proper context. So, just my belief that it really is more about ego when people debate with theists in a public forum, unless perhaps, if you do it in a team, or if you're debating something a bit less subject to philosophy and a bit more black and white, I suppose. But I don't know, I think all too often William Lane Craig in particular is allowed to give quite a compelling account of himself, even though his arguments are actually eminently refutable by those with the brains to do it. And I don't really count myself amongst, I don't really, it makes it sound like a false phrase. I don't in the slightest bit consider myself amongst the people qualified to refute William Lane Craig, but I've seen plenty of videos of people who do an excellent job of it, provided they're given the time to do it. Theoretical bullshit absolutely ripped William Lane Craig to pieces in their discussion, given the fact that he was permitted the time to actually come up with the correct refutations. But for the rest of us, it's very easy to get trapped by these stupid theistic gotchas, which to the uninitiated appear as if they're winning ground, but winning points doesn't mean that you're portraying the truth. It just means that you've managed to trip somebody up momentarily. There you go, guys. Anyway, be interested to hear your opinions. Thanks for listening. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please take the time to rate and comment, and it would mean a lot to me if you would subscribe. Thank you.